Hi, KP.
Hi, Pooja.
Thank you so much for being here and doing the show with me today.
It's absolutely my pleasure.
Oh, I'm already excited. I have so many things that I want to ask you. So let's just get straight to it. No messing about. Tell the listeners who you are and what's your name and where you come from. Tell us a bit about your journey because you've had a very colorful, I'm going to say, a colorful career journey. And I would love for the listeners to get an idea of who you are and where you came from.
Thank you so much, Pooja. Firstly, look, I'm a big fan of your podcast series, and thank you very much for having me on your podcast. So first and foremost, I just wanted to send you my love and appreciation for that.
Kisses.
Secondly, look, I mean, I think colourful is a fantastic word to use, and I guess when you look at it, it's probably become colourful over the last 10 years. I mean, before that, I was in your corporate day-to-day, world. In a nutshell, I started off my career, and I've always been creative. That's my background. I've had my degree is in marketing. My passion is in design. So I always wanted to get into something creative. I started off my early career in publishing, and I worked for an oil and gas magazine.
Sexy.
Absolutely. Sexy as it gets. Sexy as it gets. So I started off with that. And that was in a big corporate organization. I think there was about 2,000 employees around the world. I left there and I set up my own oil and gas magazine, probably around maybe 12, 13 years ago now. It was great, but like you said, it wasn't sexy. It wasn't, So what I did is essentially, and at the start of every year, I'd subscribe to a whole load of magazines. I wanted to see who was advertising. I wanted to see what the magazines looked like. I wanted to see what the editorial was. And as my core was business, I was always struggling to find something in business. So everything that I came across, all the titles were very American. They were Forbes, Fortune, Inc., Entrepreneur, all great titles, but there was this transatlantic disconnect. They would say, Pooja ran her business like a quarterback on the field. So we'd get it, but then we wouldn't get it. So we had a very, very small team at the time, and I thought, okay, if we can't find what we're looking for, let's create our own. And that gave birth to Asian Wealth magazine, which launched 10 years ago. And Asian Wealth was very much a business publication, which was targeted to the British Asian demographic. The connotation of wealth was very much around wealth of entrepreneurship, wealth of enterprise. But initially I got the whole model very wrong.
Okay.
I honestly thought to myself, we'd launch this magazine, Asian Wealth, this business magazine, and our clients would be Mr. Patel's accountancy firm down the road. That's what I thought. Within 6 months, we had to change the model completely, because very quickly we fell on the radar of luxury premium brands, because for them it was like, okay, well, Asian Wealth must be for wealthy Asians, which wasn't the case. It was for people, Asians in business. But over the first 6 to 8 months, then we organically repositioned ourselves. We reconfigured and repositioned again until we found ourselves in this premium luxury bracket. The pages of the magazine were glossy. The covers were printed in thick card with matte lamp finish, and and our advertisers started speaking that same content. We were working with Cartier, with Porsche, with Hublot, with some great brands, and we became the first publication, British Asian publication, to work with these premium brands. Even today you won't find some of these brands working with traditional Asian media, only because they're on a different journey. And for us, we were tapping into that market that they wanted to connect and engage with. So that was Asian Wealth in 2018. Because of the changing landscape of media, we dropped the print edition. We moved everything to digital. The saving grace for us is that over the last 10 years, we've managed to build relationships and build this pool of wonderful people, business professionals, leaders, creative people, visionaries, high net worths, just really wonderful souls. So that enabled us to do these private events and have our sponsors transition from online to co-hosting these events with us. And then in 2019, my brother Sonny, who's in the business with me, we were having a conversation and he asked me the question, he said, where do you think the media industry is going to be in the next 5 years? And I honestly couldn't answer that question, which also meant I couldn't answer the question where Asian Wealth was going to be in the next 5 years. So we agreed together that we need to pivot our business, and this is all pre-COVID. That we need to pivot our business. We need to see what we can do, and I think it was probably 12 months later. The Foundxrs Club was born. So that kind of leads you up from kind of the last 12, 13 years. So now we're in the Foundxrs Club.
That's quite a journey. So the Foundxrs Club, just give the listeners a bit of a short description of what the Foundxrs Club is.
Absolutely. So the Foundxrs Club is a private business networking club. We're not a physical building. We are an ecosystem. And I know that sounds very kind of, polished sales pitch, but it's not what
I was going to say. It's very millennial.
Yeah, no, it's we designed the club very much around growth. How do we help the right people? And when I say the right people, I mean the right people meaning the people who want to grow. How do we help people grow their businesses from small to medium to large, large to exit? And then very importantly, what happens to a person after you exit? But equally, how do you grow as a human? How do you grow as a person? Because if there's anything that I've learned over the last 10, 12 years, sitting around tables with some amazing people, is that, the essence of life is not just growing your business, it's growing yourself as well. And that is a big, big part of it. So it's designed very much around growth and professional and personal levels. So that's what we do. And we just design everything for growth, but equally have a good time, enjoy that whole process, which is very important as well. So,
absolutely. That's what life's about. It's interesting because when I discovered the Foundxrs Club, it was literally just I was looking for networking clubs to join, after the pandemic and things opened up, because I'm a very in-person person. Of course, I can do things over Zoom and whatever, I love my podcast. It's my favorite space. I feel so free in it. But I am an in-person person. I'm quite extroverted. I have my introverted moments, but I just feel like I can connect with people so much better in this way. And so when I discovered it, I was like, oh, interesting. And I like what you're doing. And I had a look at the website. And literally, as I read the website, I was like, yes. Like you were speaking to my soul. And I thought, this is incredible. And it was so different to all the other hundreds of networking events, clubs that are out there. And I was like, this is different. This is special. And it was very much about that growth perspective. So it wasn't the simple, you come, you network, you take business, you go. It was very, if you're in it, you're in a journey here. This is not just a come here, take, and then, whatever the price is later, that's it. You sign it off as a business expense. It was very much a community. And I hate the word community. I feel so overused, but a genuine a genuine community of connectivity that enriches people's lives through this common goal, I guess, of personal and professional growth. And I love that. This is the most like the bit that got me the most was that it was small, medium, large, exit. It was the entire journey, not just kind of come here to make money. here's all your people and off you go. And I felt really sort of compelled to that kind of club. So I wonder, what was it that inspired you to be so, and I hope you were, obviously, but to be so conscientious of what you were creating with this club?
It's a great question, Pooja. And to be honest, it was designed for me and Sunny, my brother.
Love it.
It was designed for us. So we said, actually, why would we? So the actual concept, when it came about, Sunny and I were on holiday, and we just took an afternoon out, and on the back of an envelope, we were scribbling, why would someone join this club?
Mm-hmm.
And over the last decade or so, I've been a member of lots of different clubs, and there was always certain things that I didn't like, whether it was the lack of transparency. When I say lack of transparency, I joined a club where they had around 700 members, but I never knew who those 700 members were. There was no real way to connect with those people. The only way would be you would turn up to an event, there were 100 people in a room. And even if you're there for a couple of hours, you're not going to be able to connect with 100 people.
Mm-mm.
So, I never knew who those hundreds of people were. There was, other things which I wasn't, I've joined clubs where there's 10,000 members, and, those clubs would scream and shout from them, we have 10,000 members, we have 10,000 members. For me, that wasn't a selling point.
Mm-hmm.
So it was taking all these bits and pieces to say, let's design and create something which I would like to join, which I would like, but equally get Sunny's, because Sunny and I, even though we're brothers and we're business partners, we're very, very similar, but we're very different in the same way. So, we like the same kind of music and food and movies and et cetera, et cetera. But I'm very much lifestyle based, Sunny is very much growth based. So if you say to me, if you said to let's go to a lovely restaurant, have a lovely meal and enjoy the atmosphere, and I'm up that street. That's for me. Whereas Sunny, it probably wouldn't float his boat as much. But if you said, let's do this, and actually you're going to learn something, you're going to grow, and you're going to start thinking differently, that's more of his bag. I'm also like that, and he's also like the restaurant guy. But do you know what I mean? So
yeah.
Two different elements. So. And even as a team, there's 12 of us in the team, and I always, we always kind of get each other's opinions as to what we would like, because I'm a whiskey fan. That doesn't mean that everyone is going to be whiskey fans, and so we can't just do things that are whiskey based. There's got to be other things. So we, it's very much creating something which I believe that no one else is doing. And there was a desire for it, there was a need for it, and it was about kind of adding value to the people around us as well.
I think you're absolutely right that there was definitely a need for it, because with like I say, I was doing this research and I joined various clubs, women only clubs, who proclaim to be about helping you grow in business and in your career and things. And then what was happening was, when I was joining them, the experience was not what I was seeing in the marketing. And obviously, as an ex-marketeer myself, I should know better. But I'd go in, and then it felt very cliquey and very cliquey, sort of like they had the same type of people doing the same type of events. And then I found myself like, well, where's my voice in this? How can I differentiate myself? They're talking about the same things that I talk about. So it's not, it's not inspiring for me. I don't need to learn about burnout. Been there, done it, worn the t-shirt, help other people now. So I found those really sort of limiting spaces. And then I tried others. And I mean, years ago when I worked in luxury hotels and things, I was connected to every bloody club. I had to be, as part of my work. And, you go to a networking event and you would speak to maybe 2 or 3 people that you would find interesting, and then have a connection with. And they would boast, oh, we've got, like you say, the 10,000 people, in this club. And it's like, well, I'm never going to meet all 10,000. And even when we talk about like marketing stats, like say when you send an email out, 20% is a good open rate. Well, you're not even getting 20% in these sorts of clubs and events. But I feel like there is I feel like you definitely like tapped into a space that needs more connection rather than sort of numbers. And I feel like we're in a very number driven world now, not necessarily talking about finances, but like followers and reach. And even when I invite somebody to the podcast, I have to give them my download stats, and those aren't very pure, unfortunately, because the podcast providers don't give you much, but it's very number based, and it does take away what beauty could be found from working with someone or talking to somebody or getting to know them. And I think that you've really hit the nail on the head there with what you're doing with Foundxrs Club, especially because it's so based in growth rather than take. And I think that's a real important message to put out there as people are sort of trying to grow within themselves and their businesses.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I think, and thank you very much for saying that. And it's, I'm obsessive about value, because, for us, it's about very much, and, look, as a club, we're capped at 500 members, and, so we don't want to be the club that has 10,000 members. We don't want to be, because when you're 500 members, you still have a voice. Every member has a voice. But I'm very, like I said, I'm very obsessive about value. I feel that every single member has to get value. And that value could be anything. It could be, some people join the club because they're looking for investors. Some people join the club because they're looking for investments. There are investors who join the club. There are some members, who joined because they, smaller businesses, and say, where is my next customer coming from? We don't shy away from that. If that's what it is, that's what it is. We've got members who join because they just want to enjoy the experience. There are members who join for different reasons, but for me, it's very much, are we adding value? And so when we do our events with, anyone, last week we hosted a dinner with one of our patron members, Atul Kocher, who's Michelin star chef, right? So, and the people would say that, okay, that's the value, to be in a room, there's only 23 members of the club. So very intimate at one of his restaurants, and Atul was there, half the evening, and everyone got to enjoy his company. And some people may say that's the value. But for me, it was like beyond that. So before we sat down for dinner, we done a little Q&A. And the question I asked Atul was, now that you have 9 restaurants, how do you maintain the quality of service and food throughout all of them?
Good question.
So the reason I asked that question is because not every member who was at the dinner has a restaurant, but they are different businesses. They're opening up different stores or different boutiques, or, they're expanding their businesses. And that's a big question. How do you maintain quality of service if you're not in this? You can only be in one place at the same time. So he was a perfect person to answer that question, because, with 9 restaurants, he can only be in one place at one specific time, And if you leave without anything else, but knowing the answer to that question, that's value.
Yeah.
So for me, it's very much, how am I constantly adding value, or how are we as a club adding value?
Yeah. And I believe it. I feel like it really comes across in every interaction that I've had with you personally, your website, your social media presence, people in your team. It's all been very in that space of value driven. There's no pushiness. It's very comfortable. You want to be in the club. Like that's this feels like an ad for the club, but it's the reason why I want to talk about it was because of how meaningful it is in comparison to a lot of other crap that's been created as a result of the pandemic, which is a nice way to segue into. So we've had the pandemic. There's been that great resignation, conversation that's still sort of floating around. And it's not that every single person, on this planet wants to be a business owner, because it's not for everybody. And that's completely understandable. We need people to do jobs, right?
Of course.
We do need that. So this is certainly not you must have a business. But what do you think the business landscape is going to look like now? Because there's so many businesses that have been created as a result of the pandemic, whether they solve an actual problem or not, or they are a means to create a better quality of life for somebody. I mean, I find that quite ironic as a business owner, because your first 3 to 5 years are not rosy in general, you know, unless you've got loads of investment and you've got a full team and you've got all the support imaginable. You're going to be slogging. That quality of life kind of comes a little bit later. But what do you think is, I guess, with the Great Resignation, so many people setting up their businesses, what do you think the landscape looks like in business? Do you think we are going to turn into a more business-led world, or as in like you just have a business for everything? Or are we still going to have, like, how to describe this? I don't know. So, you know, like we've got big brands, right? You'll go to certain brands for certain things. Are we going to focus more on that old school community aspect? I'm visualizing this actually as I'm talking to you, which is why I'm not being clear. But if you imagine, like, we go back in the day, we're in a village, you have a community, you go to this man for your meat, you go to that person, that farmer for your veg, you go to this person for your cheese, your bread, or your whatever. Do you think we're moving into that kind of almost old school village life kind of community aspect with business now? Or do you think the big brands still have their place, or will have their place?
I think the big brands will always have their place, and I think this is a fantastic question and a topic, because there is always, whenever things happen in life, there's always ups and downs. There's always you'll see a peak on something, and you'll see a trough on something, you know. And exactly like you said, and sometimes these things happen out of desperation. You know, if we look at, I was having a similar conversation with somebody a few months back, and I was saying, and they're saying, oh, you know, the Asian community as such, you know, they, the migrant generation have become very successful, you know, and I was saying to them that that's because when they came over from, whether it was, you know, East Africa or India or wherever it may have been, they had to do things out of desperation. There was no choice. It wasn't come here and, you know, hope for the best. They had to just, you know, sometimes 6 days, sometimes 7 days a week, just work, you know, and they had to, so they did things, they put things on the table out of desperation. There wasn't any other option. And I think if you look at what's happened over, you know, the last couple of years with the pandemic, you know, people were in very similar situations. They were pushed to, okay, well, look, you know, some people were blessed to be furloughed, but some people, you know, were actually, you know, made redundant. You know, they had, so what do? We can't now just immediately find another job because it's too hard, right? So a lot of people came up with, you know, amazing businesses. But I think, to answer your question, what will happen? And so what we did see, we saw this massive spike in entrepreneurs being born. What will happen, and what has happened, is that naturally starts to decline as things open up. People then will find, okay, well, it was great while it lasted, you know, that little business that I had, but now my job is back and I've got this new job and things. So, you know, it falls to the wayside. Some people, they start this business and they have this epiphany, they have this light bulb moment that says, oh my God, this actually is working, and, you know, and I can see something much bigger. You know? So I guess, to answer your question, there will always be a space for the big brands. I see this as a very much a positive thing. If the pandemic has enabled people to become entrepreneurial, it can only be a good thing. I've always said, without kind of diverting too much, you know, I've always said, if this country was run by successful entrepreneurs, we would be in a completely different place. Because, you know, entrepreneurs, business people, they see the world slightly differently, you know, and it's not all exactly like you said, the first 3-5 years. It's not all, you know, sunshine and roses. It is tough. So when you go through that process, you learn a whole load of things as well.
Mm.
You know? So you know, even with what we're doing in the club as well, and you know, our social impact side of things, is to our ultimate goal is to get entrepreneurship onto the national curriculum in the UK.
Yeah.
Because you know, and that's our goal. You know, because kids these days are not being, you know, taught money management, and that's a very core part, right? Kids aren't being taught money management in school.
Mm.
So if you don't learn money management from your kids, from your parents and your teachers, you may go to university, you'll come up with tens of thousands of pounds of debt, and you'll spend 2-3 decades paying that back because no one's ever taught you how to manage money.
Yep.
What we're saying is, we're not saying every kid should come out of school wanting to become an entrepreneur. We're saying every kid should come out of school thinking like an entrepreneur. So if you want to go and work in insurance or go and work in a bank, great, do it. You know, or a hotel, you know, but as soon as you walk in, start thinking like an entrepreneur. Think, how can I make a difference in my job? How can I push boundaries? You know, that's what we're trying to say. And if we can get this right over the next 2-3 decades, you know, we'll see this country in a complete different place, you know, for sure.
Yeah, brilliant. I think that's, well, I mean, that just blew my mind. I didn't realize that was something that you were doing, like to get that into the curriculum would be just incredible. I mean, obviously from my perspective, like the mental well-being and well-being in general, that sort of space, there's so much to be said for that in schools as well, that it's I can see change happening. Like they do a little bit in like my son's school, my son's 6, but it's obviously not enough. It's not contextual. It's just kind of, we're doing mindfulness now, and you know, he'll come home and say, "Mummy, I did mindfulness." I'm like, okay, great. But when it comes to that sort of entrepreneur mindset, or I guess the leadership mindset, Robin Sharma talks about this a lot. I don't know if you're familiar with Robin Sharma's work, but if you have that leadership mindset, even if he uses an example of somebody who sweeps a road. Well, if I don't sweep the road, who else is going to sweep it? So I sweep it so that it is the most cleanest and tidiest road possible. And that brings me pride, which is why I enjoy my work. So it's not that he's going to own a company that sweeps the roads. That's not of interest to him. His priorities are different. He wants a job to go to. But when I come to work, I'm going to do it as if it is my own. And then you get so much more meaning from the work that you're doing, so much more fulfillment from the work that you're doing, that it doesn't feel like a job. It feels like the means, because essentially that's what it is. It's a means to financial, you know, spending. It could be a means to buying food. It's a means to, right? So it's doing that for you. And I always find it quite interesting how when you work with different people, the difference between those who have that leadership mindset and those that don't. And I do it with my son a lot. We're very, obviously he has no choice with me. Like, I'm a coach, I'm coaching him from now. You know, he is my, I guess he's my book in 20 years time that I'm going to write, like how to coach your child. But we do this with him often. Like he's got a money box in his bedroom, and he doesn't call it a money box. He calls it his money bank. And so he coined the term himself. He puts his money in once a month, he counts it, and then he'll say, "Mummy, can I get X?" And I'm like, "It's up to you. How much is it?" And I make him do the maths on it. And then he puts that slip in, and then he's like, "No, actually, I might hold on to it because I want to go to Dino World, for instance." And I'm like, "Okay, great. Well, Dino World is like 100 quid, son. So, you know, save that money." I give him pocket money. When we go to a shop, I encourage him to choose the items that he wants to buy rather than and ask for them. So if we go to like a food, he likes his macarons over in La Durée because I am bougie all the way. And unfortunately, my poor son is, but you know, he'll go and he'll ask for his pistachio and his strawberry macaron. He will correct you if you say macaroon. He's like, "It's not macaroon. Macaroon's a coconut." But we encourage that. And even like looking at houses, the other day we were looking at houses, and I'm always shopping around for kind of like the areas that I'm interested in buying, and I was looking in one area and there was nothing available in the price range that I put in. So I was like, okay, let's extend the budget. And I extended the budget, and he was looking, he was like, Mummy, that's a lot of numbers. I was like, yes, say the numbers. And he said the numbers. And then I said, right, so this property is 1.5 million, and so is this property. Let's look at which one you would like to buy. And we flicked through and we compared like the kitchen, the garden, you know, what work needed to be done. And I said, now you tell me, which one do you think would be better for us to buy? Which one is giving us the most value? And he said, well, this one, Mummy, because the kitchen's really nice and you'll like a nice big kitchen. And then the bathrooms are really cool. Did you see that tub? But that one, Mummy, that kitchen's really ugly. And I was like, exactly. So the same price, but you're getting two different things. And it's just those little snippets, right? Because obviously he's 6. I'm not going to overpower him, but it makes such a difference to his perception of money, of value, of what the world looks like, you know. And then if he does ask me more questions, it's like, we should buy that, Mummy. I'm like, I don't have that money in the bank, son. But, you know. So now we work towards that. If we want to buy that 1.5 million pound house, we have to work towards it. What do we need to do? So I completely think that that was a very long-winded response, but what your goal is with regards to the curriculum, I think will be, I just think it's outstanding. And that for me, I think I'm having a bit of a moment, but that for me excites me about business owners and the type of people that I work with now, because I've changed who I work with, that sort of visionary where it's beyond I want to make, you know, X amount of million turnover. I want this, I want that, I want this. What am I doing as a result of what I'm doing? You know, that social impact, I think it's how we were created. You know, we were created to be in community. We were created to live meaningful lives, lost it, you know, around the 80s and 90s, I think. And then the pandemic obviously allows you to go within a little bit more to see where you could do more of this. So yeah, I think that's superb. Really
Yeah,
good.
no, absolutely, and I completely agree with you. I think, you know, it's the way that we all think, and especially over the last couple of years, you know, has changed for sure. You know, again, we say this internally all the time, and you know, when people join the club, we talk about money, and we talk about actually, you know, what's your purpose? Because what's your contribution to life? What's your purpose? Making money is not a contribution. That's not, you know, that's a byproduct of what we do.
Correct.
And you know, there is a fair, and I teach I've got 2 daughters, the eldest 15, and I teach her, and the young one who's 10, I teach them both all the time. There's a very big difference between success and fulfillment. Because I equally have very close friends who are in very high paid jobs, but they absolutely hate it. So even though the success is there, they are lacking fulfillment. You know, and I think that is a big, you know, part of education. If we can teach our kids and the next generation about fulfillment, yeah, it will change. Everything will change.
I think that's wonderful, and really nice segue into where we're going next. So with this season, I'm talking about creating an extraordinary life and what that means to us as individuals, because it's subjective. But I wanted to use the word extraordinary because I want people to feel like their lives are extraordinary, you know, whether it is doing a 9 to 5, whether it is running a business. Either way, you can make it extraordinary by doing the things that you want to do in it, things that fulfill you, things that have meaning, things that allow you to have success. So let's just come back to success a little bit, because this is something that I wanted to talk to you about, because as Asians, right? Let's get into it. As Asians, you know, you are not a lawyer, a doctor, or an accountant. You know, I'm certainly not. And you have had much success in your life. Let's say you've had financial success, right? You've had, you know, you live in a decent home, you live a nice life. So you've got some financial freedom. And you know that money is a means to, you know that it's a byproduct of. But how did you decide what success meant to you, or when did you decide what success meant to you? Because for us growing up, it was you need a decent job, you've got to have 6 figures so that you can buy the big house, so that everybody can see that you're successful, so that you have space for your husband, your wife, and your children, you know, get your flashy car, the Mercedes and whatever. Now they're very much into Teslas. And then, you know, basically just show off your stuff until you die was literally the Asian path to fulfillment. So at what point in your life did you decide maybe not for me?
I know exactly the point when the penny dropped for me. Exactly the point. So 4 years ago, on my 40th birthday party, I had a big party. You know, I love getting everyone together. So, you know, I was never not going to have a massive birthday party. And it was very interesting because we stayed out. We booked a number of rooms in this hotel, and, you know, lots of friends were going to come and stay back there. As we're leaving the night before, my wife said to me, "Shall I take this laundry bag?" You know, I said, "Laundry bag for what?" You know, those big kind of laundry bags. She said, "Oh, if people give you gifts." And I made this joke and I said, "Oh, no one's going to give me gifts." And she said, "Why is no one going to give you gifts?" And I said, "Because I never take gifts. Me coming to your party is gift enough." You know, so we were laughing about that. And I just, you know, I laughed it off. She took the laundry bag, you know, in her suitcase. At the birthday party, everyone was coming in with gifts, you know, which I wasn't expecting. And my assistant at the time, he was, and the venue was on a mezzanine, so all the gifts were upstairs, and literally he spent pretty much like the first half of the event constantly running up and down the stairs to put these bags of gifts upstairs, you know. So I had no idea how many gifts there were. And then at the end of the night, it took, I mean, there was a whole load of us, took all the gifts back, and then, you know, we came home the following day. As we walked through, my wife said to me, "You know, where should we put all this stuff?" You know, and I said, "I'll just dump it in the office." And this is where the penny dropped for me. So probably 2 weeks later, she came into the office, and I vividly remember, and your listeners won't be able to see this, but you can see behind me that bookshelf.
Yeah.
And I was literally standing there. I was on my phone. She came into the office, and she pointed at all these bags that were lined up, you know, and she said, "Don't you want to sort that out?" And I looked at it, and that moment I thought, you know what, we just want the sake of having stuff. And there was bottles of expensive champagne. There was 2 bags from Hermes. There was a bag from Cartier. There was, like, you know, yeah. And what it was, and keeping in mind that I wasn't expecting anything, but because of the world that we were in, or we you know, Asian wealth, and people thought that, oh, if I'm going to buy KP champagne, it has to be, you know, the most expensive champagne. If I'm going to buy him a bottle of whiskey, it has to be the most expensive bottle of whiskey. If it has to be this, if it has to be that. The reality was, I wasn't expecting anything. We had this joke about, you know, I turn up to parties empty-handed because me being a guest at your, you know, party is enough, right? So we were laughing about it, and I couldn't believe, and it was, so people had bought all this really, really expensive, and at that moment, I looked at my wife and I said to her, "You know what? I've just realized, you know, we in life, we just want stuff for the sake of having stuff." And it's just, and even to, so somebody bought me this Cartier pen, you know, and I promise you, it has never left its box.
Wow.
In the last 4 years, or, you know, it's never left its box, because, you know, I write with a biro, like, you know,
yeah, right.
Do you know what I mean? And it's so for me, it was actually, that was the moment that I realized that actually, you know what, there's certain things that we want, we need, and, you know, and because, Pooja, for me, I've always believed in a process of evolution, mental evolution. How do we constantly continue to grow, you know, our thought process? going back on what you mentioned about extraordinary, for me, and this is something that I've learned, especially over the last number of years, is the ability to look after yourself. And putting that in the magic triangle. So when I say the magic triangle, and some people may already know this, we put a lot of emphasis on our business or our work, and then we put a lot of emphasis on the people around us, our children, our partners, our friends, our family. And most of us, we find a good balance between the two, and we'll say, okay, you know what, that's good. I'm doing okay because, my work and my business is looked after, my family and friends are looked after, I'm good. But nobody ever really remembers that third part, that third point of the triangle, which is themselves and looking after you. So actually, I always say, where does extraordinary, come into it, is the ability to look after oneself. Do things that make you happy. Doesn't have to make sense to anybody else. Last couple of years, I love my photography. Absolutely love my photography. And, I've been saying to my friends and family for the last year, I've been saying, I've been dying to pick up the camera again. I used to do it just kind of, again, as a passion, but I haven't done it. I haven't picked up the camera. We all shoot on our phones these days, which is the standard thing. But I want to pick up my camera again. For a year and a half, I talked about it. I never did it. At the start of this year, I made a commitment to myself that come hell or high water, I'm going to pick up the camera. I'm going to work with my friends. I'm going to work with people around me and do shoots and kind of, just enjoy that whole process. And I put it into the diary, and I did a shoot with my a very close friend of mine who has a home accessories brand. And when I put that into the diary, I remember the week before, my brother was saying, okay, what's your plans for next week? And I said, I'm taking this whole day out to do this shoot. And he was like, your time could probably be used doing something better. And I know that because there were people saying, okay, can we have a meeting on that day? And things like that. But I said, no, I've committed to that. And you know what? And that's something for me. It wasn't for my friend. It wasn't for my brother. It wasn't for my wife. It wasn't for my friend. It was just for me. And I think that's so important when people are looking for something to make their world, their life extraordinary, to make sure that they look after themselves, that they do something for themselves. Not be embarrassed or shy about it, to say, actually, you know what, I want to go and spend the weekend in a spa by myself. It's okay. It's okay to do that,
So, I'm always swanning off. But
no, I think that's kind of the real kind of core element that I believe, especially making one's life extraordinary.
I like that. I like that a lot. The ability to take care of oneself, because I think, and this is an interesting point that you've made actually by that, because when we set up a business, we're obviously so personally connected to the business that we are creating that we think that we are looking after ourselves in that respect, because I'm doing something that I want to do. I mean, the first thing I ask a client is, what do you want? Like, you've told me a bunch of what you don't want, but what do you actually want? And say it's a business and I want to have a business that does X, Y, and Z. Okay, great. But what else? What else? Because that's something you can do. You can put your mind to it, see if there's a market, great, sell, off you go. That's fine. What else? And that ability to identify what brings me joy, what brings me fulfillment, that I don't have to have a monetary aspect, connected to it. I don't have to think that because I have a business and I'm so passionate about my business, that my business is my life, because all you're doing there is what the overworked do in working, like we were talking about, 10 odd years ago, where the burnout in the finance industry, for instance, was so huge, and suicide rates so high, amongst corporate people in corporate environments, because they were just killing themselves with work. And lawyers, I know, still have it right now with the amount of overworking they do. But it doesn't mean that because you have a passion for a business, that the business is your life. That's the thing that you do, no matter what. Even if it's your passion, it's still the thing that you do. It's not who you are. It's not what makes you you. It's not what brings you real joy. And joy is something you can literally feel in your body. There's that kind of little moment of, oh my God, I did it. That little clap for yourself moment. And when I saw your post about, picking up the camera, and then you posted a couple of the shots, I was like, dude, you should be doing this full time. Like, you should be making money out of this. Like, the shots are wicked. You have a gift. This is your, and you said right at the top that you are a creative person, and like, photography is such a beautiful art to be part of. I try, but I'm shit at it, and I know that, and I accept it, right? But I'm good at music. I can play a saxophone, I can pick up an instrument and learn it within minutes. Essentially, that's the gift that I have, if you like. And I love it. I love picking up the sax. That's who I am. That kind of like, oh, a little bit different. Wouldn't expect that, but yeah, I'm very musical, and it brings me joy to see someone else exploring their joy. And I was really, like, I know I've rated it and when I've emailed you, but I really genuinely love to see that, because like you said about your 40th, people were buying you gifts because of this perception they have of you. Oh, he's always, in 5-star hotels. I mean, you're always swanning off to the Maldives, and, you on the aesthetic or the perspective of you that we see is a very bougie lifestyle, which is probably why I've been attracted to you in the first place. I'm not going to lie. And, you have that breakfast in the Wolseley, it gives that perception that is, oh, how would I gift this person? This person has everything and stuff like that. But actually, if someone got you a nice print or a lens recommendation, you would be more fired up by something like that, like a link to an exhibition or something, than those sorts of products. And I feel that the more people like you there are, like successful business owners who put out there, do for yourself as well. And it's such a game changer that I think it will definitely inspire more people to create, as we're talking about it, an extraordinary life.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think as and again, I don't want to sound like an old man here, but as as I get older, and I think as people get older, you start thinking, especially if you're on that process of evolution, you start thinking differently, and going back to my 40s, when people did ask me, what did you, what can I get you? I want to get you something. What can I get you for your birthday? I did say to them, look, if you want to get me anything, get me time. Get me time, as in like time to spend with you, right? So get experience. So I was always saying that if you want to do it, book a table for dinner or lunch or breakfast or anything like that, and let's spend some time together. And I think for me, that's what it was. Above and beyond anything else, because at some point, through our life, we'll all get to this point, we'll realize that actually it's not the places that we're going to, it's the people that we're with. And I know that sounds very, very, very cliche. The first time in 2016, when I started my partnerships with the Maldives resorts, in 2016, I went to this resort. I went, as a press trip. I came back and I told my family and my friends, and everyone was like, wow, oh, amazing, and because, it's an amazing place, right? The next year I took my family. When we arrived on the island, the look on the kids' faces, and, my brother's face and my wife's face and my sister-in-law's face, that, was beyond, anything else that I could have hoped or imagined for. So, and I always say this to everyone, rather than telling people stories about it, get them to join the journey, because there's so much more fun in, reminiscing on stories and journeys together, as opposed to telling people stories.
Yeah.
Because there's so much more in that. There's so much more in that, So I think as we get older as well, we realize that, what we once upon a time thought was the magic really isn't. There's this whole different level of magic.
Yeah.
that takes you away from what we once thought about, you know?
Yeah, I'm 100% with you. I was just thinking that the challenge is now to share that learning without feeling like old fuddy-duddies, that, you know, to younger generations of how to live, you know, with fulfillment from a young age. And you can. I do it with my son. He's 6, and I've had a very strict toys rule. You know, you don't need any more toys. Okay. So if somebody wants to buy you something, would you prefer to go on, like, he's obsessed with trains, like any train, obsessed. I'm like, would you prefer to go on a train or get a Paw Patrol toy? And he's like, train. And, you know, without hesitation, he says train. And so I say to him, like, whenever somebody offers to buy you a toy, I want you to ask that question to yourself. Would I prefer to go on a train with that person, or would I prefer the toy? And see what you come up with. And inevitably, bless him, trained so well, he always comes up with the train, the experience. He wants that. And that's what he remembers. He doesn't remember who gave him what toy, but he remembers, oh, Mina Masi took me here, and this person took me here, and Nanny took me here, and Nanu took me all the way to Heathrow Airport, and I fell asleep on the bus, and this, that, and the other. That's what he remembers, because the experiences are what actually enrich our lives. I absolutely love that you said that when people are asking you about gifts, you know, what you say to them is time. Give me your time. I think that's the most special thing right now, that people are so, and I hate it. Oh, I hate it when someone responds, I'm so busy, or I could probably do something with you in about 3 months. I'm just like, okay, no, this doesn't work for me. I need someone who is maybe a 2-week diary, you know, full. I've designed my life this way. I purposely keep my weekends completely empty, unless it's kind of like a 40th birthday, you know, a big event thing. But I purposely keep them empty, because I don't know how I feel on a Friday night. You know, if I want to do that thing that I had booked 3 months ago in my diary, probably not. You know, I probably want to do something else. If the sun's out, maybe I want to host a barbecue, and who's around, come over. All of that sort of connection is so lost now. And that's something that I plug for my retreat here, but that is something that I create via my retreats. And I'm taking a bit of a risk now with my business, because I am transitioning. Once this retreat is over, I am transitioning into, if you want to work with me, you're coming on a retreat first. Let's do this. Let's disconnect completely, because you will have the most powerful experience, because I know, because I've done it with X amount of clients. I've done it myself. This is what you need. You need this. You need to create some space. If you want time, you need to create space. And within that, you're going to create intention for your work, intention for your family, intention for yourself, what you're going to do with your life. This is going to end up being a TED talk, so I'm going to rein it in. And it's interesting, again, you know, when you say about like book a dinner with me, I'm very experience based as well. And when I was meeting a friend yesterday, and I was booking, and I chose one of my favorite restaurants, and I've been doing it recently a lot. I'm addicted to the restaurants, and I just want other people to come and experience it for themselves too. And there is this one dish on the menu, which is a truffle. It's a cheese ravioli with truffle. Wow. It's $17.95. You get 3 to 4 pieces of ravioli. It is mind-blowing, because it's the simplicity of the ingredients. It's the indulgence of the ingredients, and it's like their signature, I guess, experience dish that you have. But it's so simple. There's no fanfare, and I love a life of simplicity. And anybody who I invite to a lunch or a dinner at these restaurants, I always order that dish. You have to have this. We have to share it. And they're like, oh my God, like, is it that big a deal? I was like, just trust me, and they'll have it. And then they'll leave, and, you know, yes, we've had a great time. We would have talked about 100 things like you and me are doing right now, that, you know, there are lots of things we're talking about, but there will be moments that we will have taken that have resonated with us the most. Like, I didn't know about you feeling that way about experiences and time. And I feel that connects us more deeply, because I'm like, oh, this guy's really my people, you know? And so you've taken to another layer. But just that little experience of the special truffle pasta is just a nice little moment. And also me being over the top about it as well,
Yeah. No. I completely get it, Rita. And I think, when you can appreciate these little moments, that's when you start really, that whole kind of self-gratification and self-pleasure, that is when you start appreciating these little moments. And it's, you have to be able to take it. Again, when I was just saying that we had hosted this dinner with Atul last week, we were downstairs in his restaurant, so there was no reception. Immediately people were like, oh my God, I need to post this on Instagram, I need to post this on my stories, I need to WhatsApp this to someone, but no one could get reception, and after an hour, a lot of people started saying it's really interesting, because without that, guess what we are? We're present.
Yes.
We're all present, we're not jumping on our phones and messaging this person or posting something on Instagram, taking pictures and things like that. Great, you can do that once, we're out, but actually it forced us to just be present, because we couldn't do anything on our phones besides take videos and take pictures, which was again amazing, so when you do these things, and like you said, going to a restaurant and just ordering that one dish, and that moment, and that moment of savoring the first bite as well, it's just those moments that really are hugely magical. And the idea is for people, for not just you to know it, me to know it, is for us to share that kind of knowledge and experience with other people.
Yes.
Listen, don't pick up your phone, don't do this.
Yes.
Take a bit of that ravioli, taste it, and just think of this moment now. Think of it. That's where the magic is, for sure.
Absolutely. I'm one of those people that forgets to take the pictures, and or I'll be meeting with people and, I'm enjoying them so much that it almost feels like taking a selfie would spoil the moment, or spoil the lunch. But I've realized to be a bit more aggressive with selfies, because I want the documentation for myself as well, just to have on. I'm creating a photo wall, for instance, at home, of the people who are bringing joy to my life. I just want to see them, on a Saturday afternoon, and be reminded of them, because when they're sitting in my phone, I'm not a person who sits and scrolls on the phone. I'm digital for the sake of being digital, but I am a person who prefers to be in person and being and present. So I don't sit and scroll pictures, but if I have them on my wall around my house, I will look and I will remember. There's a picture of me and my son in front of my sink, and it's a picture of him. We were in the Maldives and he was 1, and it's him kissing my lips, but because he couldn't kiss, it was just his mouth open, like about to eat me. But every time I look at that picture, I wash up how many times a day, and I look at that picture and I'm instantly transported to that moment in the Maldives, the sun on the skin, the sky, the blue of the sea, all of that. And it just fills me up. And that's, what I'm trying to emulate with these pictures of friends. So I kind of force the selfie. But I think that's one of my favorite things to do, is to say to a couple of my friends who I've known a long time, so I can be very direct with them. But I'm like, if you're going to spend time with me, you cannot book anything else. I don't want a portion of your time. I want free time. Okay. I want free time. We're going to have lunch and we're going to see where the afternoon takes us. I want us to be free. And then one of my friends, he's very naughty, but he's always he's got an Apple Watch and then the phone. And so he's constantly looking, and I'm like, switch that thing off when you are in my company. Okay. Because I'm talking to you. And the moment you look at your watch, you have removed yourself from where we were in the conversation. You're not present anymore. And I want you to be present, because I want you to get the most out of the time that we spend together. It's for you. You're the one who says you love spending time with me. So spend the time with me.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And we're in this world where there's constant distractions, whether it's the Apple Watch on your wrist, or phones, or whatever it may be. We're full of distractions. And I think this, again, it goes back into management. I know you just mentioned that when you hate it when people say, oh, I'm just really busy, or I can meet up in 3 weeks or 3 months time. Whenever I have that whenever someone says that to me, my immediate response is, you need to manage your diary better. Because and some people take that a bit abrupt, or not offensive, but I can be really abrupt in that sense and say that you need to manage your diary better, because if someone says to me my diary is managed, it's not. If you can't, it basically means either you don't want to meet that person, or it's your diary is not managed well. Because the thing is, in the world that we live in, that means we are giving priority to things and people and whatnot, far greater than we should, or we need to be, because we need to be making time for things that we need to do and want to do. It's very clear. So when we had this conversation about this podcast, I think you asked me, might have even been last week, and I said, let's do it Monday. So it doesn't matter how busy, you'll make time for the right people and the right things that you want to do and you want to enjoy, for sure.
Yeah, I think so. I agree with that. And it's interesting when you say that about that whole like mismanagement of their time, or not managing their time properly. There's that phrase, this is an old phrase, but when you make plans, God laughs, kind of thing, because you can't plan your life to a T, because then you lose the moments that could be opportunities and joy and happiness and experience, and you don't know what that could be. And I don't know why, but I've always been an opportunist, not an opportunist, but an opportunist in terms of the way I see the world. Like, every encounter I feel has a reason, and I may not know what the reason is, but I will allow it to unfold and see where it goes and where it leads me. And more often than not, it leads to something good if I'm willing to be open to it. Like emailing you and say, we were talking about something completely different, and then I was like, I'd really love to interview him. I really enjoy talking to you. I feel like you've got a lot to say. We'd have an interesting conversation. I mean, we're having an interesting conversation, so much so that I've forgotten that we're recording a podcast and I need to condense it, because it's nice to see where things go. And I purposely did it with the podcast to be conversational so that we could flow. I have an agenda for the show, but I feel like what we've ended up doing was the original point was about the journey of growth. And I think that in itself is beautiful. And I know, like at the end, I said we should do 3 tips, for creating an extraordinary life. Yes. I feel like you've really talked about some incredible things here: experience, time management, cultivating, when I say experiences, not being afraid to change a path, like the journey with the magazine. You started off in one way, but then you realize, this business model doesn't work. We've got to change it. You changed it. You pivoted the business, not being afraid of doing what I guess is right for you at that time, which is, something that can be applied to any area of your life.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're absolutely right. The 3, I mean, there's a lot that, I could recommend, but the core thing I would probably say in terms of tips is, number 1, make time for yourself. That's probably the number 1, and I think especially after the couple of years that we've all been through, it's not just one person, but we've all gone through this. So I think number 1, make time for you and do things that you enjoy. I think number 2 is evolve and grow with the world around you. Just like, you mentioned with the magazine and pivoting, and there is that misconception that if you've got the formula right, just keep going. No, I think every single person and brand on the planet, every single one has evolved. Yeah. You mentioned Mercedes, in our podcast earlier. If you look at Mercedes 10 years ago or 20 years ago to where it is now, any car brand, food brands, everything.
Yep.
I say food brand with a bit of a joke, because I know that there's this. Chocolate bars and everything seem to be getting smaller.
Yes.
So it's like, it's in that sense, but there is a lot of evolution. So I think staying, constantly evolving and not being afraid to evolve is definitely another one as well. So and time, like I said, probably the last one I would say, time. Respect time. Respect time, share time with other people, share time with yourself, and those. And again, I know it sounds very cliche, but when you stop thinking about it and you say, actually, what, this is what I want to do, and know that people that actually bring good energy to your world and, make you feel like this is what life should be like, that's the real kind of, the quality of time, especially.
Yeah, I agree. I think all of those points are superb. And I think we'll end it there. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this. I hope
Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much, Han.